This is Dr. Fox. Thank you all for your continued support for CRPN and CRPN Central. For more information about our mission, please contact us today at info@crpaynet.com for details.
Here you go, sponsor, the feasibility questionnaire, just as you ask. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Ide. Hey, these numbers, are you sure they are accurate? They seem much higher than we had anticipated. It's a good problem to have, but we just want to make sure we're not planning for a space mission.
Well, we did the best that we could to complete it accurately with the information we had. We have only this summary of the protocol, and the feasibility system did not really give us the time to investigate the questions. After discussions with our physicians and our staff and the report from our database, we made educated guesses.
Alright then, thank you for completing this. We'll get through this process and we'll get back to you.
Amazing, thanks so much, we'll be ready.
6 months later.
Site, we need to talk. Your enrollment numbers are sluggish at best. They are nowhere near projections from feasibility. What gives?
We are trying as best as we can, sponsor. When the full protocol came out, it included a number of exclusionary variables that were not in the feasibility. On top of that, the trial arms changed completely. It's like we are recruiting for a totally different trial from the initial one. Had we known all of this information from the feasibility, we could have had a chance to change our predictions.
Look, we can't just give away all of those secrets to on-site selection. The protocol stops should have been more enough for you to make those educated guess.
Apparently not. We will do our best, but our answers can only be as accurate as the information and the time that you give us.
Maybe so. But we'll ponder that. In the meantime, we sent you another feasibility questionnaire with the trial summary. Please work your magic and get back to us by the end of the week. We need to complete onboarding all sites immediately. And just a heads up, our site selection process is just as competitive as a reality TV show. Your ability to provide accurate estimates will definitely impact your chances of making it to the next round.
Feasibilities, mundane and redundant tasks that are valued far more by speed, timelines, and how much information we can collect than by quality, accuracy, and precision of the trials themselves. All while sites are expected to complete without pay at unrealistic timelines and with little to no outcome correspondence. Sites complete these tedious questionnaires as part of their business cycles as a standard. However, I'm not quite sure we are doing justice to our sponsors, our sites, or our patients when we rush through the motions simply to check a box. Sites, I know they are terrible. However, feasibilities are one of the only methods we have to predict the course of a clinical trial. Do your part to complete them as accurately as possible, and never be afraid to respectfully speak up and share your voice to improve the processes. After all, the only way we will improve is if we change. Sponsors, sites aren't nearly as dishonest or inflated as you might think on their feasibilities. The good sites out there are actually working hard to give you good and accurate information, but they can only do as well with their predictions as the information that you give them. We are all after the same objective here, to develop quality research experiences for our sites, our sponsors, and importantly, our patients. Welcome to CRPN Central, the official podcast of the Clinical Research Payment Network. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Fox. CRPN Central discusses the real issues with our clinical research industry to explore and identify mutually beneficial solutions for all of our stakeholders. Trial feasibility questionnaires are a standard icebreaker among our industry stakeholders, and boy, what a bad first impression they give. Sponsors and CROs are in such a hurry that they expect sites to complete them without critical information, and with such a weight on the results, sites are incentivized far more to provide fast and inflated numbers than accurate and well-informed answers. In an industry of tight timelines, margins, and resources, how do we create accurate and reliable feasibilities for optimal site, CRO, and sponsor experiences? Today, we will discuss feasibilities in the clinical trial industry, defined as the process of assessing population demographics, experiences, facilities, and processes of a clinical research site to successfully perform a clinical trial. First, we will speak with a site manager with over a decade of experience in completing feasibilities at the front lines. Then, we will speak with an industry professional who is currently advocating and exploring how we may improve the feasibility experience industry-wide. To maintain valid comparisons, both interviews will use the same questions, and my guests did not know the questions before the interviews. We will reconvene after the interviews, compare guest answers, and perhaps identify potential solutions to improve the feasibility process for each of our industry stakeholders. Our first guest has significant experience in the front lines both as a clinical research coordinator and as a site manager. Irena Davies is currently the clinical research manager at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation, where she and her team work diligently to ensure their physicians and their patients have the research environment needed to perform quality clinical trials. Irena's experience in feasibilities, from paper versions to portals, make her an excellent expert in the topic, and I'm so thankful she has taken the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me Miss Irena Davies. Irena Davies, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Fox. Such an honor.
Would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
So I'm Irena Davies. I am currently over at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation as a clinical research manager. I've been in the clinical research professional world since 2005, over 18 years now. Love the work that we do over at the site side, very passionate about the work with our coordinators, our investigators, and then obviously our patients.
And so I'd imagine in 18 years, you've taken a number of positions in clinical research and responsibilities. What do you do now?
Right now, I worked with a team and we do cardiovascular research. My group really focuses on prevention. How do we prevent patients to even come see us in the first place? A lot of lipid therapies that we're working on. I've been in this cardiovascular space now for 3 years over at the Minneapolis Heart Institute Foundation. And obviously, I've worked in endocrinology as well as GI research. The whole thing has just kind of come back full circle for me from my years in clinical research.
And you said your team. Are you at like a manager director role?
Yes, so I'm a clinical research manager. Our organization is a nonprofit organization. We started over 41 years ago, and we partner up with a cardiologist group here called the Minneapolis Heart Institute, Irena Health Minneapolis Heart Institute, and they are our healthcare network that we partner with. And so we run the clinical trials on our side, supporting our cardiologists and our providers. Our organization is currently over 100 employees. We have investigator initiative research side. We have a sponsored clinical trial side. We have marketing and education, really just supporting our community, our patients, and the important work that we do.
Today's episode is on feasibilities, defined as those surveys that we have to take as sites, almost like a job interview. We come in there and we fill out these numbers and hope that we might get awarded a trial if we answer the questions right. Maybe it's not exactly the best system, but it's definitely the way that the industry has gone. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I've asked these questions to another professional in our industry, and we're going to take your answers to the questions and we're going to compare it to the other person's answers. And we're going to see if maybe we can find some kind of an alignment in the implementation of feasibilities so that we can have a better experience in that site startup selection process.
Sounds great.
Have you ever performed feasibilities in the industry?
Since day one.
So 18 years ago?
Yes. When I started filling them out at the very beginning, it was all paper-based, emailed. I would print out the copy. I would answer the questions about my site, and then I would review it with my investigator and then have them sign off. Then I would scan it and email it back. That was the process when I first started. And then over time, it shifted over to the Survey Monkeys. All of a sudden, you realize really quickly that if you didn't save your answers or screenshot or print it to save, that once you hit the submit button, it just kind of went in the cloud somewhere. I don't know who got it. Just all of a sudden complete it, submit it, and then we would get contacted if we were a site that the sponsors and CROs wanted to work with. Over time, then I would learn that I needed to save my answers because I couldn't remember the answers I provided. That was a shift towards technology. And then now it's becoming more complicated than that, where it's pages of questions for the sites to address and answer. But it's now through a portal where questionnaire, it's usually emailed just to the investigator. The investigators would then forward to me, but usually I wouldn't have access. I couldn't get in because it was really just for the investigator to complete. So then I would have to reach out, get my own access to complete it on my investigator's behalf. And so that was a little time consuming to even just get access to the feasibility questionnaire to be able to complete how many millions of questions that I was being asked to answer. And really now over time it's become really a full-time job because I'm using a ton of resources to be able to answer these questions. And I'm pulling resources from my IT department to answer specific questions that I don't know. I'm pulling resources from my clinic team to help me answer questions about equipment that were being used for imaging. Also now it's taking me more than just maybe 30 minutes, an hour to complete. I'm taking several days because I don't have all the answers.
And you said that sometimes you do print screens and things like that to create an archive of the feasibilities that you've completed, because sometimes maybe feasibilities might help you to fill out other feasibilities later. When you hit that submit button or you finish your feasibility questionnaire, do you ever get a report or some kind of a saved document that shows your answers?
It varies. It varies on what system you're using to complete this. And sometimes it just, you submit, it's just gone. You're unable to go back to save your answers or print the answers that you provided. Some portals will allow you to download your answers to save. So it kind of varies. And so over time, I've just learned to just continue to screenshot or save my answers because I don't know at the end what that's going to look like. Because sometimes I might be able to be provided with that report. And sometimes it's just, I submit it and it's done. It's gone.
Can you walk me all the way back to the beginning? When are you triggered to complete a feasibility?
It's so funny because it's usually sent to our investigators. The investigators are the ones that will receive the initial invite to complete the feasibility questionnaire. I don't know how many investigators out there are completing these on their own. What happens is my investigator will forward it to me. Hey, now is this something we might be interested in? Can you get this completed? And that's where then I would go in and answer the feasibility questionnaire. Obviously, I will go to my investigator if there's certain questions I don't have and they might have more of that knowledge. But at the end, I do review that with them to make sure that they also agree with the answers I provided.
Does anyone ever come to your organization in Minneapolis as the place when they give you feasibility, or is it primarily straight to the physician?
It's primarily straight to the physician. I will say that over the years, I've actually have really great connections with my sponsor side. What our relationship over the years, they've now just know that they just include me into those emails when they're sent to the investigators to CC myself because they know that I'm the one that would be facilitating on getting this completed and making sure that it's sent back in a timely manner.
On average, how long does it take you to hear back?
Sometimes it could be, in the next couple of days. Sometimes it could be weeks, months. Usually what happens if I haven't heard back in a few weeks, I will just reach out, follow up. What does that timeline look like? I completed it on this day. When should I expect to hear back? When are you guys expecting to make your final selection for your site? It depends on each site if they have a relationship with the sponsor and CRO, because if you don't have that direct contact, you don't know who to reach out to get a timeline. Sometimes the feasibilities that come through to us aren't really from one single person. It's usually kind of a generic email sent from a group to us. And so who is your contact to make sure that you can reach out to them?
What do you think are some of the challenges that we face right now for our industry's current feasibility process?
The repetitiveness of completing these feasibility questionnaires. We're filling out these constantly, providing the same answers over and over and over. We'd love to just have one system in place that we can provide all the information that all sites and CROs can have. And I know there are vendors out there that try to do this and has not been successful, or I have not been a huge fan. Very frustrated because it ends up being a lot of work on the site side to provide all these answers and not really gain any benefit from it. At this point, we're not getting paid to get these completed. And so all this work and time and energy spent on this to get nothing in return, it's kind of defeating, to be honest. What I've learned over the years and what I've started to incorporate at our institute is a site sponsor and CRO feasibility questionnaires to kind of give that back to them, but then provide a package of all of our site's capability that sponsors and CROs are all typically asking us. And so I can just provide that in one packet and just say, this is what we can do. This is our experience. And then they can make that decision to select us or not, instead of having me complete a feasibility questionnaire for each different trials, each different CROs and sponsors. sponsor. The feedback I get from that, it's not helpful for the sponsors or the CROs because they need all that information into their system so that they can make sure that they can compare the sites and make the right decision on selecting the right sites for their trials. So it actually doesn't really help them really, or they can't take that information and then enter that in themselves as well.
You know how CROs work for sponsors based off of a transactional basis on contract by trial? What would happen if sites were able to do what you did and they created a universal packet that could be helpful for the sponsor or the CRO? That means that the CRO could not charge for site selection because it was only done once. And so now it's like, no, every single contract we need to charge for site selection.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of like a financial disincentive to follow processes like that. But at the same time, you've got those simply amazing platforms that people have been trying to put together. There's a lot of different opportunities out there that people have tried to crack this nut, but nothing really took.
No.
Why do you think nothing's working?
I feel it needs to start from the site side. Talk to your sites. What do sites need? For so many years, they're trying to crack at it, but at the sponsor and CRO level.
And what you just described is textbook top-down tech. It's that whole sponsors and CROs coming up to sites saying, we give you permission to use this solution. We're not really listening to you, but this is what you will use for our trial. And then sites are just like, okay, I'll put that on the pile of the other 50 solutions that my other sponsors are making me use. It never works. Top-down tech never works.
No.
Feasibility is a huge culprit of top-down tech for sure.
Yes.
What about accuracy? Are you given all of the information that you need to make really good and educated assessments for your feasibility?
I make sure I do answer every questions on the feasibility as accurate as I can. Sometimes I don't have the answer and it might take me a while to get back. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that we are really a site that can perform, but that also I don't want to take a trial that I can't operate at my site and then set my team up to fail and then having not a great relationship with the sponsor zero to never maybe potentially get selected again. But what happens during this whole process is sites don't have all the information they need about the trial themselves. We are all working through such a tight timeline, and I get a feasibility questionnaire, maybe a protocol synopsis. I don't even have a full protocol. I don't have all the details I need to make an assessment. Is this a study I want to even do at my site? And are we even able to? I get sponsors and CROs are on a very tight timeline, but sites should be able to be provided with all the information they need to be able to make that assessment if they are also able to move forward with the study.
And I've run into that as well. Please fill out this feasibility. Here's the protocol synopsis. Well, I'll do what I can, but it's just a synopsis. I don't know the details of it. And then all of a sudden, congratulations, you're awarded the trial. By the way, we need you to do this ancillary, those labs. Do you have access to this equipment? No, I don't. Where was this on the feasibility? I was filling out the feasibility based off of what you were asking, and now it seems like the story has changed.
I know, it's so crazy. Or you're looking for a specific patient population that was not very clear, and I don't have that. And so how do we eliminate time and effort and energy and work on something that we can all become efficient and help each other out?
Sites are not paid to do feasibilities. If you're sitting there taking days upon days to fill something out and you're not getting paid for it, odds are it's probably not going to be a priority of attention for you. You're just going to have to fill it out because you've got to fulfill the other obligations that are actually paying you.
Right.
Do you think that if sites were compensated moderately for their efforts on feasibilities, they would become more accurate?
I would agree, yes. Just knowing that if we provide accurate information and able to be compensated for that, I think sites will be able to take the time to really sit down, be thoughtful of their answers and complete it out. Like you said, sites are busy. We're trying to run multiple clinical trials. We're seeing patients. We're working with different sponsors and CROs. The one feasibility questionnaire is not going to be our number one priority. That could work.
I've talked to sponsors and sites alike, and I know that this is a practice. We don't have to deny it. But sponsors sit there and they tell me, my rule of thumb is I literally just take the feasibilities that the sites give me and I just cut all the numbers in half. At the same time, you've got the sites over there saying, oh, well, we have to exaggerate on our feasibilities because that's the only way we get the trials. That kind kind of discourages a site from being honest when a sponsor just cuts the numbers in half. Then if you actually are truly honest on the feasibility, you're not going to get the trial.
Right.
How do you think sites can ethically address the inflated feasibility numbers across the industry?
When I complete the feasibility questionnaires, I have the patient population and I will generate the high number. However, when then shift to how many do you think you can enroll, being really realistic, yes, I might have 300 patients that would qualify for your trial, but let's say break it down, how many comes in a month, but maybe 10 out of the 20 might consider, and I might really only randomize 1 or 2, maybe 5 if I'm lucky a month. To be able to break that down as honest as you can would be helpful, but then also if you're not being considered because your numbers aren't considered accurate and it's being cut in half, then maybe that's not the right trial for you too. That's not the right sponsor and CRO that you should be partnering up with. It's easier said than done because at the sites, we want trials. We're not looking to get rich, but we want to be able to provide therapies for our patients.
You stick to the data and you hold true to your answers. Just be honest, and if people don't want to take you for your honesty, maybe you really don't want to work with them. Right. What do you think are some of the benefits of our current feasibility process?
The more sites are able to complete these feasibility questionnaires, I think sponsors and CROs will have access to our site, our capability, our capacity, and our experience of what we can do. Maybe if we're not the right site at the moment for this trial, that maybe we might be considered as a potential for future trials.
So literally like a business development aspect of feasibility.
Yeah.
You're improving your opportunities to be part of trials simply by filling out feasibilities.
Correct.
And you have an interesting perspective because you did old school feasibilities and now you do current feasibilities with all of the different portals and processes. Which one do you like better?
I still like to kill trees. I still like paper. It's easier. I don't know. I mean, yes, I need to get with it and just work with the technology. But when the technology is great when it works, but when it doesn't work, it is very frustrating. Sometimes going back to the caveman ages might be the most best and simple way to do things. So I'm trying, but it was easier to fill out the paper. And back then, the questions, I mean, it was maybe 5 pages and they were very basic. What is my site experience? What's my investigators' experience, and then what's our patient population. And that was really basically it. And now it's more complex. If I was to print it out on paper now, maybe 20, 30 pages of questions I have to complete.
Simple questions, maybe a little less detailed. There are many, many more questions, all of the while you're at it questions in the feasibilities. Some of them have nothing to do with site selection, but they just want to build a database. And we know that. 30 pages at a time, which is, even if it's on an electronic system, it's pretty daunting. It almost feels like we have muddled up the conveniences and efficiencies of what we could be doing with electronic feasibilities with what we think is easier to collect now.
Spot on.
How may we make feasibilities better in the clinical trial industry?
Maybe turning it back around to sponsors and CROs and giving them a feasibility questionnaire to be able to help my site determine, is this the right study for us to move forward with? It's how I'm trying to approach it, but it's really just my site. It's not all sites. It's not going to work with all the other sites. And how do we make it better? We in the industry really do need to slow down. We're pushing so many different ways. We have these tight timelines and we want to get to that finish line. But I think we all need to take a step back and just slow down, take a breath, and then maybe we can get better if we didn't just push everyone on these tight timelines. I do worry sometimes. We're moving way too fast. It's kind of scary.
Walk me through your dream feasibility experience as a site.
My Barbie dream world.
Yeah, from start to finish, the feasibility of your dreams.
Oh gosh. Okay. It would be wonderful if the right person at the site was contacted. If I was initially approached with a feasibility questionnaire, I was given the final protocol. I was given a lab manual. I was given a pharmacy manual. I was given what the requirements would be needed for the trial, what equipment, imaging equipment. I was provided all the information I need as a site to know about the trial up front. And then I was given maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks to complete this, to really then go through all the details about this trial to be able to properly answer the feasibility questionnaires, to then submit it and send it off. We love that maybe we don't need so many questions about the site, and maybe go back to simple, sometimes might be better, of just what is my site experience, my investigators, my core coordinators. Yes, we have all the equipment that you need and we have the patient population, but let's not really break everything down. Let's keep it simple. And then if you really want to know more, you can then maybe follow up with the site or come on site and do a site qualification visit. And then to also be told if we're selected or not. If I'm selected, great. I also get a study startup packet. You've been selected. Get this all completed by the end of the week. And a lot of times it's like I get this on a Wednesday, Thursday, and by the end of the week, I only have a couple days to complete it. It's not going to work. But then if we're not selected, tell me why. At the site side, I would love to hear just feedback on why we weren't selected and what can we do better next time. If I don't get that feedback, how do I improve?
That's exactly what job seekers say as well when it comes to applying for jobs. If I didn't get the job, why don't you let me know? Maybe if you let me know, I could have been better and I wouldn't be wasting everyone's time on bad feasibilities in the future. We could help each other.
Right. Let's just help each other. Be kind. That's it.
That sounds good to me. If I were to give you the microphone right now and I said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about our industry's feasibilities and how we can make them better? What would you tell them?
Everyone just be kind to each other. It's not going to be perfect. So let's all work together, find solutions from the sponsors, CROs, and sites. How do we partner up and collaborate and just do better? I think I'm starting to see more and more of sponsors and CROs against sites or vice versa. And it's like, no, we're all a team. And can we just get together, figure out how can we improve the feasibility questionnaire process? Because it's not working on the site side. It's not helping sites. And we want to be strong partners to be able to work with the sponsors and CROs.
Be kind to each other, listen to each other, listen to the right people, and really understand and consider what they have to say, and know that we're not all at each other's throats, but we're here for a mutual mission. And if we come together and do that on the very beginning at the feasibility side, we can make sure that everyone's life will be better in the end.
Right.
Well, Irena, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central. An excellent interview, and I look forward to sharing it with the audience.
Thank you again, Dr. Fox. Such an honor. Thank you for having me.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Our next guest has helped to shape and revolutionize the industry for many years. Dr. Christine Senn has worked as a site founder. She helped to found and lead the Centricity Research Network. She has served as chair of the board of trustees at the Association for Clinical Research Professionals, and now she serves as senior vice president of site sponsor innovation at Advara, where she continues to lead the way for improved trial performance and professional relationships. Christine is an expert advocate in this industry. She has listened to and advocated for our research sites for many years, and I am so thankful she has taken the time to speak with us today. Please welcome with me Dr. Christine Senn. Christine Senn, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central today.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. I cannot get enough of you.
Well, thank you so much. Would you be willing to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in 18 years and I started at a medical center, had a wonderful time there, and then met Jeff Kingsley and moved down to Georgia where we had one site and it eventually built up to be the iAct Health that everyone knew, and we grew it and merged with other companies and became Centricity Research. Today I'm at Advara and my title is exactly about bringing sites and sponsors and CROs together. Love the conversations we're having to innovate our experiences together.
After 18 years in the industry, I would imagine that you've probably gone through a number of feasibilities in your lifetime, right?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And that's perfect because today's topic is just that, feasibilities, those wonderful little surveys that every single site loves to take, hoping that they're going to get a trial and just crossing their fingers. I hope I gave them the right answers. I hope that they want me. Please pick me. It's like having to fill out a job application every single day.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'm going to ask those questions to another individual in our industry. And what we're going to do is we're going to take your questions and we're going to compare them to that other individual's questions. And we're going to see if somehow, some way we can find some alignment in how perhaps we can do some of the best feasibilities in the industry. How can we make this work for everyone involved?
Phenomenal. I'm all for it.
Could you walk me through the feasibility process from the creation of that feasibility all the way to the analysis and the interpretation?
Some of these are on paper, some they're digital. You can only be in it once and answer all your questions at once, which gives you no opportunity to go and ask other people. And some are more iterative where you can go different places. From the site side, it's a much more time consuming process than people think. I would say, even as you were talking, it occurred to me that maybe sponsors and CROs don't even realize that we might get 3 feasibility questionnaires for one trial. And so we get very minimal information. We answer it in triplicate, and we really don't know what anything is about. And then you get into a true questionnaire. And to your point about filling out a job application over and over, I did go through applying to jobs fairly recently, and there are the companies that hold all the information you put in last time. They're the companies you start literally from scratch every single time. And you were looking at maybe 40 minutes per job application. And I would say it's much, much longer for a feasibility questionnaire. There is quite the experience for sites. And I really do wish that there was more recognition that we are doing a lot more work than is even seen, like they could ever possibly pay off.
What you were saying, sometimes sites might have to fill out the same feasibility for the same trial 3 times from 3 different CROs. Odds are every single one of those feasibilities were in a different format. So your logistics are just insane. You have to modify and adapt what you do for every single experience when you fill out a feasibility.
And you probably remember this, as people did get away from paper, everyone thought that was so great. And I will say it is, because, hand cramp. But there was the thing we liked about paper where you could write comments on the side of the paper where you're trying to be like, no, we don't have a name special equipment here. But if we're going to get the trial, we can order it. We learned it only takes 14 days to arrive. And now sites, if there's no option for that, just have to say, yes, they have it, and then they'll order it, or no, they don't have it, and then they're going to lose the trial, even though they could easily order it. It just really needs to not be all completed in one sitting, because that's absolutely undoable.
From what I've seen, CROs, they're going to look at the protocol, try to find out what kind of patients they're looking for. And then they're going to go out and they're going to create a feasibility questionnaire, and they're going to ping the sites. Hey, tell us about your capabilities, your demographics, your patient population, your experience as a PI. Just like a job application, they're pretty much interviewing you for a job. So sites, they'll spend a long time. Sometimes they have to go ping their PIs, other doctors, other people to understand how that feasibility goes. They bring all this information together. Sometimes it takes a while to get. They'll send it off and then nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even know if it was received. Sometimes they don't know if they were rejected. It's literally just like sending it off and hoping that someone might call you.
My God, the analogies to job applications are insane right now.
It's a business-to-business job application between sites and sponsors or CROs. It gets pretty crazy.
I think everything right now is about communication. It suddenly occurred to me that we're talking about something where this very important moment about trying to choose your sites and a site having a business opportunity coming up is the beginning of the communication, and it's quite poor. I think everyone knows we would all want that to go really well. What's more important than picking your sites, considering how hard it is to enroll patients? I was at the SCRS conference. One of the points that someone made was in contract and budget negotiations, just wait till you have everything, because we really can't put together a budget until we know everything. Well, I feel that way about feasibility, and I'm really adamant about this. Basically, the whole idea of measure twice, cut once. A site 100% has no idea how many patients they can get in a trial when they have a 2-page summary of a protocol or a 1-paragraph summary of a protocol. And then that protocol is going to change 6 weeks after the SIV. And now we're held to those numbers as a site. And that is just completely not working for the industry.
Have you ever filled out a feasibility from a CRO who hasn't even gotten the RFP yet?
100%.
That's not fair for anyone. The CRO is trying to be competitive, trying to get a head start on this RFP when they don't even know if they got the business. And then they're coming up to a site promising them this invisible carrot that may not even be there.
It's really problematic.
Sometimes I think haste makes waste, and feasibilities, that's exactly what we're doing. And so many times we're in such a rush that we have to repeat all of the work that we do.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because that I think is critical. Everyone talks about meeting their first milestone, the first site brought up, the first patient enrolled. I would think of that as being a short-term goal as opposed to the true milestones. With how much money they can lose by being delayed, you want to finish enrolling the trial on time. You want to get the number of patients you wanted with usable data, and that means quality data. Rushing to get your first patient in is not the solution to meeting your deadline for enrolling everyone. Measure twice, cut once. You'd be better off doing a very thorough CRO plan in advance, figuring out who your CRO is, who your sites are, having them really truly understand the protocol, asking a few key ones, what the issues would be with this protocol. And then if you have it really all set, I think you're going to have fewer protocol amendments. Fewer protocol amendments means that you're going to be better off enrolling at the site. The protocol amendment just throws you.
You have to start it all over again. You are literally giving sites this half-baked protocol that's not ready yet. What do you think are some of the challenges that we face right now with our industry's current feasibility process?
I definitely think that not having all the information before it goes to the site, it's doing several things. First of all, it's creating a bad relationship between the site and sponsor, and not even just on that trial. So if I'm someplace and I hear sponsors or CROs talking, and sometimes, when they don't necessarily think that someone's listening or a site knows, they'll just say, we just take the number the site gives us and cut it in half. I understand their perspective, and I actually understand why they're doing it. They're doing it because the sites don't meet their enrollment goal. But could we do a root cause analysis here and say, is the site maybe not reading the numbers they put on because they didn't have all the information? Dr. Fox, you and I are going to go on a date right now.
Okay, it's a date.
And at the start of the date, you're going to be like, how long do you think we'll be together? I'd be like, 7 years? 20 years? Is it 2 months? I have no idea. And that's what they're asking us to do if we have too little information. Now you're on more information. So let's say several dates later, and you have a better sense of how that relationship is going. It really is the same with the amount of information we get at the feasibility. Until I have all the information, I have no idea how many people I'm going to get in your trial.
When sponsors take feasibilities and cut those numbers in half, they essentially punish the honest sites. So now the only way that you can possibly be competitive is to inflate your feasibilities so you actually get the trial.
It is quite the conundrum.
And on top of that, I've heard many sites say, oh, we're just going to inflate the numbers, and then at our SIV, we'll change the enrollment numbers after we've gotten the award and after we're about to get the green light.
It's a strategy, and it does seem to be the most used strategy. In order for a site to get the business, they have to go high at feasibility or they'll be kicked out. So you do your best possible number based on the information you have. And then you have to pivot later. You don't want your feasibility number in your contract. You always want to create a situation with your partner, your children, whatever, where you create a space where you can be honest with each other. So you don't develop a space where you're going to lie to get the answer you want or the behavior you want. We need to create this trust. And we don't even know who to talk to when we get a feasibility questionnaire or why we were rejected.
It takes literally hours to do these feasibilities. There's no guarantee of business. And on top of that, oftentimes these feasibilities are taken and thrown into a database so that CROs can have a bigger database. Sites are never compensated. They don't receive money for doing all of this work. What do you think would be the benefit of actually compensating sites to do all of this work into feasibilities?
I do think there would be two major benefits. You can just spitball and throw feasibility questionnaires at everybody if it's just free information. So maybe it would be better thought out in terms of what are we providing to the sites and really provide them what they need to give us accurate information, since now we're paying for that information. I also think it would give accountability by the sites so that the sponsor CRO now has this relationship, like, we contracted with you to give this information, and basically do an analysis after the fact to say, this was completely off. You did not meet these goals at all. Where did this go awry? That way, feasibility questions could get better, or the site could learn how to do things better, or that site doesn't do well at feasibility and maybe the sponsor doesn't want to work with them anymore.
Exactly.
All very reasonable, but the site becomes very accountable as well.
Because people don't value the site's time. For one, the sites don't value the feasibility because it's free work and they just want to get it over with and they don't really want to put effort into it. And two, sponsors don't value sites' time, so they just keep throwing them all these free feasibilities that aren't being filled out correctly and honestly are not covered by contract. There's no legal binding or liability around a feasibility, because once you sign a CTA, what does it say? It says anything that was discussed prior to the signing of this CTA is null and void. It's irrelevant. So now what in the world are we doing feasibilities for anyway if they're not applying value to site time, if they're not being done accurately, and importantly, if they really have no legal recourse? There's a reputation recourse, but there's no legal recourse around them.
Wow, yeah. You should write a blog about that. Those are some amazing points.
What are some of the advantages of feasibilities right now in our industry?
The database point is valid. I don't know how they're being developed right now. There seems to be such variability in them. How they could be developed would be to look at them as a way to make sure your patient population is what you truly expect it to be. Everything with patient enrollment is a funnel, and I think that there would be a real opportunity to, in the software, create a funnel system for it.
I just attended a conference in Wisconsin. The electronic medical record company Epic gave a presentation there, and they were talking about how sometimes electronic medical records could be used to do pre-feasibilities before feasibilities go to sites.
Which is really an innovation that will truly help. There are other AI companies as well, but I love that Epic cares about clinical research in this way. And the other thing they could do, we really need more investigators in clinical research because we have a shortage there, but we also need different populations of patients, which you're very well aware of, being able to then say, okay, these are a lot of good sites, and this is what the demographics of the patients we found look like, could be really helpful. Out of curiosity, I'm going to ask you a question. What percentage of sites on a trial do you think should be research naive? So you get fresh populations.
That is a very interesting question because you have to ask yourself, what's the benefit of a research naive site? From what I've seen, the people who are research naive, who they're just now getting started, they're much more hungrier when it comes to enrolling patients. It's kind of like the fat cats don't chase mice, so to speak. Sometimes those really, really big sites who have huge reputations and they just have trials just thrown at their tables, they get their pick and they get to reject ones because they don't have time to do it. They don't work nearly as hard to meet those enrollments. Now, research naive sites are also going to have enhanced diversity populations because odds are they're going to be in underserved population areas, some of the new research areas, and as a result, we're going to see some phenomenal enrollments coming out of these groups.
I agree. I'm just going to keep mentioning conferences. Apparently, it's conference season. A panelist said sponsors always say that they want more diversity. And what she said was, when I actually ask if they have opened themselves up to new investigators, new sites, I haven't yet had anyone say yes. So there's that desire there, but there's also that fear of newer or unused sites. That will be a problem with diversity. And I know our conversation is about feasibility, but diversity and feasibility really need to find a way to get married.
They're hand in hand completely. Let's talk about the future of feasibility with the politics and with a lot of the regulations coming in. First of all, Fedora. So we're going to have diversity requirements for new drug applications, which means odds are diversity is going to be a very substantial part of the feasibility process because you're going to have to find those patient populations to do your trial. The second one, given the DCT guidance coming out, given the fact that DCT services will be baked into each site visit and those site visits will be approved for DCT capabilities by the IRB, which means it's going to be built into the protocol. When that happens, DCT will also be a part of feasibility.
Very valid, yes. I think about a CTMS and running a site for a long time, and I don't remember if the CTMS I used provided the categorizations for race and ethnicity or if we put them in. But right now, most people's database are lacking information because we have not collected it in the same way that is going to be expected of us. I worked for a site network. We had thousands and thousands of patients available to us. And right now, there is a group of people you were calling Caucasian who will now be called something different.
Especially with Federal Register number 15 that just came out, parceling out the MENA populations. Middle Eastern, North African populations, they are no longer white. So as of 2030, Arab Americans are going to be on demographics, which means Arab Americans are going to have Fedora requirements. And they have never had an opportunity to list themselves as Arab American. They've always just been white. So how are we going to backtrack? That's a huge, huge problem for feasibilities right now, especially with the new demographic requirements.
Absolutely. As we're talking, I'm thinking every site right now needs to rush out and change all of their intake forms because every day that they're collecting data with the old demographic method is just putting them that much further behind as we get closer.
We talked about the bad, we talked about the gritty, which by the way, my soapbox is I hate those HTML feasibilities that do not allow you to go backwards and they do not allow you to change your answers or to take time to talk to people about it. How do you think we can make feasibilities better in the clinical research industry?
I want to go back to the one about the HTML where you can't go back. You can't go back and it could exclude you from a trial you really need, but only because your finger slipped. It's so ridiculous that you can't go back. I was a little surprised when I brought this up to someone that they weren't aware that we couldn't complete a feasibility in one sitting. I think that's surprised me because I don't know how one person in one sitting could get all the information they needed. There is so much that goes into giving quality data. We're always told get your feasibility form in within 72 hours. I know that sounds super reasonable, and we always, always, always aim for 72 hours. However, 72 hours isn't 72 hours. It is extremely time consuming. And I would say that if it took 4 hours spread over 3 days, that is not very easy.
Maybe that's actually one thing that we could improve is we need to have an understanding. This is not a sit down and take a test kind of a thing. You have to bring in an entire organization of people, stakeholders across entire offices to come together to answer this thing. And to get it together in such a short amount of time, good luck. And I'd like to maybe ask that of the sponsors and the CROs. If you're going to put this together and you had to rein in people from the entire industry, and people have vacations and they have lunch breaks and they have sick kids, how do you expect that to get done in such a short amount of time? And the answer is, well, no, we just take 6 weeks. Yeah, I know. I've been on that end of the stick too. I wonder how much of that information in feasibility is really necessary when a patient's life is at stake versus the databases that you could generate. There have been so many attempts at this. You could create site profiles where you have all this stuff together and you only ask them on feasibility what's relevant to that study. For some reason, it just never really takes off.
I love site profiles if they were done well. I know there's a big push too to get rid of some of the data points that people are collecting just because it could be useful or it's exploratory. I do really get that because I think we're all very curious people. But if you're excluding people from your trial and you're not meeting your enrollment, I'm not sure exploratory is fiscally sound for the sponsors with how much money it costs to do a trial. I bet you're the same way. You're financially minded. I care a lot that the sponsors and CROs are financially healthy.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want them to spend money on things they shouldn't be. And so part of my interest in the efficiency of the whole industry is they thrive, sites thrive, patients get medications. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Every dollar that you save a sponsor is a dollar that's not coming out of a patient's pocket eventually. That's very important to remember. It just drives me crazy when I see sponsors having to waste money on something that doesn't work, because that just makes me feel like we're all just wasting our time.
Waste really kills me. Wasting a patient's time, wasting a sponsor's money. It's really what could keep us from seeing those timelines in drugs going down.
If I were to hand you the microphone right now and I just said, what would you like to tell the entire industry about feasibilities, where they are now, and where you'd like to see them go? What would you tell them?
I would love to see feasibilities improve from two standpoints. The first is, I would say, to think with the end in mind. And this is in terms of what you really want to accomplish with the feasibility. If the purpose is to find the right sites, I assume that means the sites that have the population you need for your trial. Really be as clear as possible on what you need in that feasibility and take out all the fluff. Get the data you need, because when you ask too many questions, you're diluting what you really need. The other part is to be prepared that you know exactly what you need. So you've thought through the protocol, you're really aware of it, because otherwise your entire feasibility is useless to you.
Be thorough, be concise, and be very intentional with the questions that you ask, with an understanding that this is just a first impression. It's just an understanding to take this to the next level so you can maybe tour a site or to see if it justifies some due diligence. And then if we can do that, then we can streamline feasibilities to a point where sites are not overburdened, sponsors are not lied to, and importantly, we can actually get some accurate data to understand if these trials are performable at all.
That's actually a really important point. If it's performable at all, you could actually nip that in the bud before you lose any money as a sponsor.
Christine, thank you so much for coming on to CRPN Central. It's been an excellent interview. I'm stoked to share this with the audience, and get ready for the live event.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Irena has worked in the industry for over 18 years. Now, at Alina Health's Minneapolis Heart Institute, she is applying innovative and collaborative methods to improve feasibilities on the front lines. Feasibilities may range from paper to electronic surveys to portals. They can take a ton of site resources to properly answer the questions. They vary by system and by sponsor. And they go directly to the PI, not to the appropriate stakeholders, which requires strong relationships to properly circumvent inefficient efficient industry standards. Repeated efforts across each feasibility, combined with the expectations to complete without the necessary information, adds additional burden to the sites. And in lieu of the mountains of failed talk-down tech solutions, it may be time to start solutions at the site to solve root problems, not the consequences at the CRO or the sponsor levels. Paying sites for the time they exert to complete feasibilities would apply value to the feasibility results. And if we eliminated the while you're at it exploratory endpoints, we would be able to slow down and at the same time avoid impossible timelines. And if we be kind to one another, we may create a supportive environment for an improved feasibility experience. Christine, just like Irena, has served in this industry for 18 years in leadership roles, from site founder to vice president in site and sponsor relationships. Sites are continually burdened with feasibilities, sometimes 3 for the same trial across different CROs, with very little information, strained timelines, and sometimes with an expectation to complete in a single sitting, only, similar to job applications, to be left without communications or notifications of outcomes. When creating feasibilities, we should be prepared to measure once and cut twice, which may result in streamlined processes and fewer protocol amendments. And instead of adopting haste makes waste practices with a focus on short-term first patient in objectives that lead to inaccurate answers and blindly cutting numbers in half by sponsors, we should instead build our systems to focus on our long-term objectives to finish enrollment numbers, collect quality data, and approve new and innovative therapies. And if we compensate our sites for their time, we make sure that we are clear and concise in our questions, we are prepared and know what is needed, and we create systems that reduce waste with a focus to save our sponsors money, feasibilities may advance to the next level of quality and performance. Both of today's guests confirmed that feasibilities are currently variable and burdensome for our sites, and both guests confirmed that compensating sites for their time and keeping questionnaires clear and concise would improve feasibility experiences and quality. And while Irena prefers the flexibility of paper and solutions coming directly from our sites, Christine doesn't miss hand cramps of filling out paper surveys. She sees the power of combining diversity and feasibility initiatives, and she believes we as an industry must reduce waste to save valuable sponsor resources and, as a result, reduce future patient burden. So, how do we create accurate and reliable feasibilities for optimal site, CRO, and sponsor experiences? With Irena's innovative site-centric initiatives and Christine's industry-wide visions, both of our guests aligned and resonated across 3 distinct principles. To improve our industry feasibilities, we must focus closely on communication, simplicity, and awareness. Speak transparently and directly before, during, and after the process, and be honest about the challenges that we face. Focus questions solely on what is needed to make valid site selections with all of the required information, and be kind and conscious of one another to help and support our overall and long-term objectives. Combined, perhaps we may strive toward a better feasibility universe with informed sites, supported sponsors, and overall enhanced enrollments for generations of trial participants to come. Thank you for tuning into today's powerful feasibility episode. It can be so easy to add one more question here and another there in a feasibility. But remember that death by 1 million paper cuts can be a true problem and, overall, destroy the entire reason we are performing a clinical trial. Let's strive to keep our feasibilities simple and understand the needs of each other for a better experience and a truly improved clinical trial performance. Thank you to Irena and Christine for sharing their experiences with us today. Thank you to Dipali, Patel, and Kelvin for volunteering in today's CRP in Short. Finally, thank you to my CRPN sponsors for making this podcast possible. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time on CRPN Central.